2, 3, 4.
Places, almost time for places. Thank you, 5.
5 minutes to places.
Thank you, 5. Michael.
Tami.
Do you remember your first artistic experience?
My first artistic experience. I definitely was at a church play. Like I did plays at church when I was a kid. My mom used to take me to church all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I played like a flower boy. I remember I was really like, I was the smallest young, person in the show, and I sold flour like bread. And I don't know, I imagine something, I don't remember anything much about it except for that. I imagine something like Oliver, where they're like peddling goods and they're like, will you buy my flour? And there was a princess and something about Jesus.
How old were you?
I would say like 5-ish. I was definitely a little one.
Were you old enough to know like what this thing was? Like what performance was? The difference between like real life and performance?
No. I didn't really know that like what I was doing. And I always I didn't realize that till like much later that like, oh, this is like something I used to think of theater as like an undecided art degree. It's like, oh, I want to do art, I'm creative, but like I don't have a steady hand, and so I'm gonna make plays. And I sort of viewed it like that until I was in high school, and I kind of committed to theater.
Is that when you got the like theater bug? When you were like, I want to do this for my life?
Yeah, I remember exactly when I got like the bug. I was in high school, and there was this program that if you got like good grades in your art classes, they would get you tickets to shows and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I went to see, at the time, I was like very rock and roll, and I was in a band and stuff, and The Who was my favorite band, and The Who's Tommy was playing at the Benedum, and Alice Ripley was the mom, and I didn't know that until much later, and I went, and my friend that I went with said like my jaw was just like dropped on the floor like the entire time, because it was like it had everything I loved at the time. It was like, it was kind of weird, like trippy rock and roll, also theater. Like, and so I remember like leaving the theater and being like, wow, like I'm gonna do that for ever, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was like really what got me into theater, was seeing that play.
Well, what keeps your inspiration? What makes you want to continue to make theater?
I just really like to make things that didn't exist before. Like I like problem solving in a creative way, and I really like telling stories. And they say that arts are a mirror to society, and we holding up that mirror. But I get a lot of inspiration from every day, and I kind of like to like recycle things that are seemingly mundane. Like I'm really interested in our cell phone usage, and I would love to like do an entire play on your cell phone, like just because it's of the nature in which that we behave.
Mm-hmm.
And I always get like visions for projects when I'm reading. Like if I'm reading something, even if it's something not related to theater, I'm like, oh my God, like I love neuroscience. Like I read a lot about neuroscience, and there's these really fascinating books that's like what happens to your brain when you're in certain experiences or spaces. And I find that very inspiring, and like I try to always like
you're just as interested in the audience's experience as you are in the artistic
I
experience.
would say I'm more interested in what's going on for the audience. Like I think like I was never really like, look at me, I'm an actor. You know, even though I did, you know, perform on many stages for my entire life.
Yeah.
I was more interested in like what was going on in the audience's brain the entire time, which is why, like, you know, I'm a fan of immersive theater. I don't know if you know that, Tami, but I'm a fan of immersive theater.
Never heard of it.
And, you know, participatory. And I've really been dreaming about doing theater for one recently and like creating like hyper personalized experiences that are like made directly for one person and can never be received in the same way ever again. So I've been really thinking about that, especially with COVID.
Yeah.
And like we're all alone, and I like, what kind of creative gift can I give to others? And it's a solo, you know, experience.
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
So, like, is that your dream project? If you could have a dream project, if there's something you're really dying to work on, is that it?
I think that that's part of it for sure. I definitely, well, I have two maybe dream projects that I've been thinking about like for forever, like as long as I've been working. And one of them is just an interactive room. Like it's not really theater at all, like, you know, and there's an actor or something in it, but more of an environment, like, you know, sort of installation art, that interactive environment that like changes and uses your, you know, what you put into it, you know, get out of it, and sort of going with that, what I was talking about with like neuroscience and like trying to intentionally create an experience with the environment rather than an actor. So that's like, I have this dream of just like having a blank room that I can like do whatever the hell I want in it. and like you know, record the audience's voices and play it back for them somewhere else, and like set up this crazy like system that has got like 40 computers that are all running at the same time and like, you know, operating this magical machine of a room. That's one of the, and I always wanted to do a play or an experience, maybe for one, that is like based in the neighborhoods of Pittsburgh. That's like sort of a love letter, for lack of better word, but that's, you know, like from every neighborhood to one person, where there would be some sort of guide or character or actor or that would guide you through the experience in their neighborhood. I always think about it in Bloomfield because I love Bloomfield, and I know exactly what shops you would go into and what old ladies like I would try to commission to like be part of it. Like, and just as like a sort of, this is, you know, we're here, this is this moment, you know, in space and time, and so, you know, celebrating the neighborhood in that way. Yeah.
So what's stopping you? Like, what's a barrier? What's in the way of you not just doing it?
Well, the room project is that I don't have a room. So the space. But the other one, I think it's a lot of just my own, you know, personal fear and doubt. And then that, you know, that it'll be, and then also money. Is just like, I feel like I could get a great team of people together, but with what money would I pay them? And that's always something that I struggle with, as, you know, I wouldn't call myself a producer, you know, because I like am not good at that arm. So I need to like get a best friend who really likes to write grants or something.
Right. Yeah. Those barriers, man. Grant barriers. I hear you. But yeah, it's really it's really interesting how fear, our own fear, you know, keeps us so removed from our dreams, you know, our own barrier that we build ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons I love the environment, like the room project, is because I don't have to do it. Like, I don't have to be there as a person, so I don't have to face my own fear. Like, it operates on itself. And like, I, you know, get really nervous and like, you know, anxious a lot of times, even though, you know, I get through it, but like, I still have those feelings. I think everybody kind of does.
Yeah.
But the magical thing about the room project is that it has its own life, you know, and that although I might be operating it, I don't have to go and like have a conversation with somebody and try to figure out like what they love and make something, but you know, like that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty interesting that the most sensitive people are the people that fall into lines of work that are so based on judgment, the judgment of others.
It's like whenever you're performing, it's like that's your body, that's your voice, that's like, and like that's so personal. Like,
yeah, I mean, I don't think it helps to be vulnerable to be in this business, but if you're too vulnerable, it keeps you from being able to participate.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Well, who are you interested in working with? Like, who inspires you? Whose work are you wanting to see more of? Who do you love
So,
now?
I think a lot about all of my, you know, I think my friends are super great. But I think a lot about performers that aren't theater performers. Like, I like to work with people who have different artistic, you know, skill sets. And I think about, you know, if I think about dance, I think of Slow Danger and Taylor and Anna are great. I love working with them.
Yeah.
I've done that before a couple times. The Moon Baby is actually a drag performer. I think they're moving to Philly, but I've always loved their absurdity and their strange commentary. The way that they comment on like themes and especially things like beauty and gender without even speaking is always fascinated me, and I like would love to work with that and make something more. And I also recently saw a performance of Shayna Simmons' dance company, which that blew my mind. And I never really thought about dance. And it was like another moment when I was like, you know, like, I guess I did musical theater growing up, and I was like, I dance because that's what you do. But I was never.
I have to dance.
This art form that I thought I knew, you know, I really thought I understood it, and I didn't. I was just like, wow, like this is beyond, like this has a, you know, very personal effect on me.
Yeah.
And I was shocked that I was like, I thought that, you know, I already knew what dance could do.
I love when you think you know something, and then your mind is,
you know,
Places.
Oh.
Thank you, Places.
Thank you, Places. All right. It's showtime. Have a great show, Michael.
You too, Tami.
All right.
Thank you for